In Jen Lindsay's book, Fine Bookbinding, she says the following in regard to end bands. You only need to know how to make one or two for the purposes of fine binding. That which follows may actually be all that you need. I haven't been able to find a consensus on the name of this end band. In 2019, Kathy Abbott called it a multicoloured, multi-stranded end band. I'm going to call it a double core end band. If you're looking at catalogues of books by designer bookbinders, this is the end band you will see most often. I'll start by making the primary core. I think all the cores I've used in end bands so far have been round. This core is going to have a rectangular cross section. I'll laminate a piece of parchment to goat leather. For the leather, something without too much grain would be best. I'll glue out both materials with EVA on the flesh side and bring them together and let it dry under a bit of weight. I'm using scraps, but I do want to make a square at least 10 by 10 centimetres, maybe a bit more. From each strip cut from the core material, you can get 2 end bands. Lindsay and Abbott both mention the thickness of the core should be half the thickness of the sections. The idea being that the thread for the tie downs should be in line with the inside of the core. If the back of the core is in line with the outside on the fold of the section, the inside of the section is the thickness of the unfolded section. I think in reality the fold makes the paper a bit thicker, and thus why I'm okay with my core being about 1.2 millimeters thick when the sections are a bit under 2 millimeters thick. The head caps at the spine should be very slightly lower than the edges of the boards. You don't want the head caps dragging on the shelf. Assuming the head caps and boards have roughly the same amount of leather over them, the height of the end band core should then be the same height of the square minus 2 thicknesses of thread. My square will be 3 millimeters, and I'm using thicker silk thread, so I'll make the height of the core 2 millimeters. The parchment of the core faces the foredge of the book. I'll pull it over a bone folder to get it to match the curvature of the spine of the book. I'll tie down in the centre of sections, but not in every section. Since I don't know which sections I'll be tying down, I'll flag the centre of every section. I'll use long strips of thin paper and I'll stagger them to reduce the swell caused by them. By using the long strips, I can flag both head and tail at the same time. This end band is not in the Greenfield and Hiller book. I guess it's the single core version of the French double end band, which is in the book. There are good written instructions and other supporting material in the Lindsay book. Kathy Abbott gave a demonstration of this end band at the Bind 19 conference in Sydney, and it's my notes and the conference proceedings that I mostly use. There are some great articles in this conference proceedings, and they're available from the New South Wales Bookbinders Guild in PDF format for $15. I'm going to use 3 different coloured silk threads. I'm using buttonhole silk, which is a bit thicker and thus easier to see in the video. Abbott suggests that thinner thread makes a better looking end band, which is true. I'll call the thread that is wrapped around the primary core the primary thread, and the other threads the secondary threads. The secondary threads form the second core and can't be seen as they're wrapped by the primary thread. You can add as many secondary threads as you like. You can swap any of the secondary threads with the primary thread at any time, changing the colour of the end band. If you want a thicker secondary core, you can add a thread that never becomes the primary thread. It just adds bulk. This book is reasonably thick at about 34mm, so I'll need a fair length of thread. The main colour I'm going to use is red, so I'll make it a bit longer, maybe 80cm, and the yellow and orange about 60cm. As it turns out, the red won't be long enough, which is useful as it forces me to show you how to add thread and the desperate measures I go to try and make the red last longer. I start by putting a needle on the primary colour, which is red, and go in just below the kettle stitch from the inside of the first section. I then go back over the head of the book and back through the hole where the thread went through the first time. Leave a tail about 15cm long on the outside. Once I have the loop in the primary thread, I put the book into a finishing press with the foredge facing me. I work with the book in this orientation and only rotate the book for the video. I normally wouldn't move the book in the press around like I do for the camera. Tie the secondary threads to the primary with an overhand knot. Then I use the primary thread, which comes out the front, to pull the knot up against the spine of the book. I put a small piece of magic tape over the tails of the secondary threads to keep everything stable and out of the way. Put the core on the edge of the spine inside the loop of the primary thread and pull the primary thread to tighten the loop and secure the core to the edge of the spine. Hopefully there's about 1 centimetre of core sticking out past the shoulders of the book on each side. Take the primary thread at the front and take it around to the back going under the core on the right side of the loop. Then bring the secondary threads to the front, also going under the core, but to the left side of the loop. This is the normal configuration with the primary thread at the back and secondary threads at the front. Everyone that has sewn an end band will know that the core flopping about can make wrapping the thread around the core difficult. There is a great little trick that can be used with this end band where you put a pin through the core on the left side into the shoulder of the book to hold the core in place, making life much easier. Now we can start the main repetitive process in sewing this end band. Bring the primary thread over the core and to the right of the secondary threads. Take it under the secondary threads, encircling them in a clockwise direction, and take the primary thread back under the core. Carefully pull on the threads at the front and back to even the tension and pull the loop of thread tight around the core. This is repeated until you want to change colours or tie down. The other things that you'll need to do is tie down and change colours. I'll demonstrate that a few times. I'll also demonstrate adding thread and of course finishing. But first I'll do a few more wraps and then tie down. You really want to tie down before the core starts to flop about, and you need to be in line with the centre of a section. So after a few millimetres, work out where the centre of the next section is and aim to tie down once you're in line with it. Tying down is straightforward. Instead of taking the primary thread back under the core, put a needle on it and poke it down through the section, aiming to come out at the back just under the kettle stitch. Then continue as before by bringing the primary back over the core and wrapping the secondary thread clockwise. You'll notice I use the secondary threads to pull the primary thread into the back of the section. It may look a bit confusing, but once I've got the primary thread in position, I bring the secondary threads back to the front. Changing colours is also straightforward. Once the primary has come to the front and gone under the secondaries, the new primary colour is taken to the back instead of the old one. The old primary thread is now a secondary thread. The main tricky part is making sure the new primary thread is not tangled with any other threads, and that once it's at the back, you can still only see the old primary thread wrapping the secondary core. I'm normally boring and just do repetitive patterns, but since you can change colours whenever you want, you can get very creative. Maybe the sections of your book are made with different coloured paper, and you want to match the colour of the end band with the colour of the paper. Or maybe it's a pattern in the edge decoration that you want to match. I decided I wanted a band of orange in the centre. It would have been a good idea to make a template to get the symmetry correct. At some point I realised I wasn't going to have enough red thread to complete the end band. Tying knots in silk can be fiddly, so I decided to try and put off the inevitable by tying down with the orange instead of the red, saving a bit of red thread. At this point I can't put off the inevitable. I have to add more red thread. The time to do it is during tying down. Once the thread has gone down through the section and is at the back, you can use a weaver's knot to add the additional thread. Since we started at the centre of the first section, we'll finish at the centre of the last section. Once you're in line with the centre of the last section, go to tie down by taking the thread to the back, down through the section and then simply taking the secondary threads to the back by taking them under the core to the right. Use some PVA to glue the threads to the spine and also put a layer of glue over all the tie-down threads and over the back of the end band. This will attach the end band to the spine of the book very securely. Avoid getting glue on the top of the end band. Once the glue is dried, remove the pin and trim the ends of the core off at an angle from the very edge of the thread at the top to the outside of the shoulders at the bottom. So if all you ever want to do is fine binding, that might be the only end band technique you'll ever have to learn. As always, I really appreciate you hitting the like button. If you're able to and want to, you can support the making of more videos like this through Patreon or with a one-off contribution, and the details are in the description below. To find videos I've made on specific topics or other projects, the best place to go is the Daz Bookbinding Video Guide. It's the index to the channel. If you want to be notified of my future videos, please hit the subscribe button and select the notification bell. Until next time, cheerio.